Pickle. It's now time to roll out the Week 3 Dave Campbell's Texas Football Associated Press Texas High School Football Rankings. Of course, Dave Campbell's Texas Football has long produced the state's most respected Texas High School Football Rankings, and we have been the official rankings provider of the Associated Press since 2019. So when you hear that so-and-so is number 1, they're talking about us. Mm-hmm. These are the rankings that people are using. And so after a wild and woolly week that caused us to do a little bit of adjustment, we've got some rankings for you, including a new number 1 in Class 6A. Let's roll it out. The Duncanville Panthers ascend back to the number 1 spot with their win over South Oak Cliff. Galena Park North Shore now up to number 2. North Crowley up to number 3 in the state after their thrilling win over DeSoto this past week, ending their 23-game winning streak. Austin Westlake stays the same at 4. DeSoto drops to number 5 after their loss. A lot of chalk after that, although Allen jumps up 4 spots with their win over Cedar Hill. Coppell up a spot to number 12. The Woodlands moves up 3 spots, as does Bridgeland. Full sheer now to the top 15 with a big win over Fort Bend Ridgepoint. Katie's loss to Atascocita drops them from number 11 to number 16. Denton Geyer still on the rise up to number 17. Rockwall remains the same after a narrow loss to Lake Travis. Fort Bend Ridgepoint drops 5 spots with their loss to Full Shear. Prosper leaps up 5 spots with a win to a win over the Woodlands College, or rather a win over Rockwall Heath, and 4 new teams into the state rankings. Klein came back into the state rankings with a win over the Woodlands College Park. Byron Nelson, with their thrilling win over Louisville on Dave Campbell's Texan Live, gets into the top 25 with a win over Louisville. Fort Bend Hightower beats Spring Westfield. That's good enough to get them up to number 23. And back into the rankings, the Willis Wildcats with a K. Big win over Klein Collins. That gets them the number 25 spot. Austin Vandergrift, Cedar Hill, San Antonio Reagan, and Dickinson crash out of the top 25 in Class 6A. On to 5A we go. 5A D1, not a whole lot of movement. Smithson Valley's loss this past week to San Antonio Brennan drops them out of the state rankings. As a result, everybody kind of nudges up a spot. Port Arthur Memorial stays the same at number 10, but new to the rankings at number 9, Pflugerville Weiss, now 2-0 on the year. They get a big game this week against A&M Consolidated, who is number 8 in the state. 5A D2, a lot more chalk here. We kept South Oak Cliff the same at number 2 again because, quite frankly, they're just punching up so high above their weight class, and their performance to us, there's nothing that indicates and nothing about their opinion. Our opinion has changed on South Oak Cliff because of these results. Everything else relatively chalky. Richland's big win over Colleyville Heritage drops Colleyville Heritage out of the rankings. And back into the top 10, Liberty Hill gets their wheels back on. They beat Leander Rouse to reclaim the number 10 spot. To 4A we go. 4A, a little bit of movement here, but the top 8 are all unchanged. Stephenville, Chapel Hill with their thrilling win over Gilmer, and Frisco Panther Creek plus Salina and Kilgore round out your top 5. Bay City crashes out of the rankings. That nudges Lake Dallas up to number 9. And new to the rankings, put some respect on those Pirates of Pine Tree. The Longview Pine Tree Pirates are the number 10 team in Dave Campbell's Texas football. 4A Division 2 now. 4A Division 2, a lot of change. Number 7, Pleasant Grove. Number 8, Waco La Vega. And number 9, Graham all crash out of the rankings. Sinton, as a result, nudges up to number 7. We dropped Gilmer from number 5 to number 6. Brock leapfrogs them simply because, Gilmer's 0-2, but at the same time they played they played Chapel Hill on the road and took them to the wire. I believe they were throwing into the end zone as time was expiring for the win. But the 3 new teams into the rankings. Number 8, Madisonville is 2-0 with their win over Navasota. Number 9, Seminole is 2-0 with their win over Shallowater. And number 10, Silsbee into the top 10 with their win over Little Cypress Mauriceville. To 3A we go, where there's a couple of other changes here. Paradise and Shallowater crash out from number 6 and number 8, respectively. Top 5 unchanged. Malakoff, Columbus, Franklin, Edna, big win over Bay City, and Bushland with their big win over Canadian. Hitchcock nudges up a spot. Pottsboro nudges up 2 spots to number 9. Grandview up two spots to number 10 or to number 8. And new to the rankings, The Leopards of Liberty Ilo, the number 9 team in Dave Campbell's Texas football after the win over Henderson. And after a big win over Dangerfield, the Eagles of Tatum are into the rankings at number 10 in 3A Division 1. 3A Division 2 was absolute chaos. We kept Gunner at number 1. I just don't think there's anything you can glean from punching up 2 full classifications. Plain and simple. And there's nothing, and it also helps that I don't know if there's anybody who played particularly well enough in week 2 or to necessarily grab them. The best argument would be Poth, who really took it to Fall City. But remember, that's a 2AD2, a 3AD2 against a 2AD2. But Poth rises to number 2. Canadians lost to Bushland, drops them to number 3. Jacksboro up to number 4. Lexington up to number 5. Holiday up to number 6. Wall and Tidehaven, despite losses to Brownwood and Goliad respectively, remain at number 9 and number 10, but we do have 2 new entries as Dangerfield and Newton both crash out of the 3A Division 2 rankings. 2 new entries. Number 7, New Diana. The Eagles with a just really impressive romping over Gladewater, and East Bernard, now number 8 in the rankings after their win over the Woodlands Christian. To 2A, where this is a tale of 2 divisions. 2A D1, nothing to see here. They went 10-0. No notes. Everyone looked good. Top 5 remains unchanged. Ganado, Refugio, Honeygrove, Timpson, and Stamford. Garrison won a thriller over ARP, and Hawley took it to Albany. That takes us to 2A Division 2, where, as we mentioned in the open, the teams went 3-7. Now, a lot of them were punching up a classification, including Stratford, who lost in overtime to Panhandle. They remain number 1. Mart's win over Maypearl, which is a 3A team, vaults them up to number 2. Windthorst, with a win over a good 3A team in Wichita Falls City View, vaults them up to number 3. Munster drops a spot after losing to a 3A team in Holiday. Albany is down from number 2 to number 5 after punching up to a state-ranked 2AD1 squad, but they are now 0-2, and I have a couple concerns about that offense. Bremond loses to a decent Grapeland team. They remain the same at number 6. Shiner's now 0-2. They get skunked by Rice Consolidated. That is a 3A team. We dropped them from number 3 to number 7. Wellington beats a team from Oklahoma, moves them up to number 8. Lovelady... Okay, Collinsville's number 10, the new number 10 team in the state, after beating Cooper 38-2. Keep an eye on Collinsville. Lovelady played Timpson and lost 50-48. There's a real argument to be made that that's the second best result of the week in 2A Division 2. That a 2-point loss to a state-ranked 2A Division 1 team. Fall City crashes out after their loss to I just said it. Their loss to Poth. That's right, in the Polish Bowl. To 6-man football we go. 1A Division 1, where there's a little bit of shuffling, but it all kind of makes sense. Gordon remains the number 1 team in 1A Division 1. Abbott remains the same at number 2 in 1A Division 1. If we can go to the 1A graphics. Thank you. Whiteface moves up to number 3 with their win over Happy. Westbrook gets a win over Jonesboro. That vaults him up to number 4. May beats down Oglesby. They get moved up to number 5. Jonesboro drops to number 6 with their loss to Westbrook. Happy drops to number 7 with their loss to Whiteface. Good. State-ranked loss, right? The bottom 3 remain the same. Knox City, Newcastle, and Buena Vista. To 1A Division 2 we go, where there's a little bit of change. Benjamin's win over Follett was awfully impressive. That was a top 10 win for them. They vault up to number 3. Cherokee moves up 2 spots with their win over Lakey. Oglesby's loss to May drops them to 0-2 and drops them from number 3 to number 5. But again, it's a state. They now have 2 losses to state-ranked 1A Division 1 squads. Klondike loses to number 1 Jayton. We dropped them from number 3 to number 7, although I have some concerns because they weren't particularly competitive in that game. Sydney edges out Eden. Keep an eye on them. Whit Harrell gets a win over Hart. And new to the rankings as Follett crashes out, Rochelle, new to the rankings at number 10 with a win over Menard. To the private school ranks, we have a new number 1. San Antonio Holy Cross, the new private school number 1 team in 11-man. They get a win over San Antonio Christian. Argyle Liberty Christian has their long winning streak snapped as Texas High beats them 35-32, but we dropped them to number 2. That's a state-ranked 5A team. It's a pretty decent loss, but certainly 2-0 in what Holy Cross has done is worth being up there. Dallas First Baptist remains the same at number 3. Fort Worth All Saints up a spot with a win over Plano Prestonwood. And at number 5, Dallas Parish Episcopal back into the rankings with their win over Bel Air Episcopal. Bel Air Episcopal crashes out of the rankings. And the private school six-man ranks. Houston Emory Weiner and Pasadena First Baptist remain number 1 and number 2, respectively. Decatur Victory Christian and Fredericksburg Heritage nudge up a spot to number 3 and number 4 with the loss of East Texas Homeschool. And new to the rankings, Corpus Christi Annapolis, the Warriors, now the number 5 team in our private school six-man rankings. They beat up on Pawnee 68-0 to earn their number 5 spot in the private school rankings. So there they are, the Week 3 Dave Campbell's Texas Football Associated Press Texas high school football rankings. You can find all those rankings at texasfootball.com/rankings. This was a particularly challenging week of rankings. A lot of movement, as you can see, but you have to really judge who they're playing and the value of them, because we are still in non-district play. So those are the Week 3 Dave Campbell's Texas Football Associated Press rankings. You can find all those rankings at texasfootball.com/rankings.